Hey everybody, going live, TMBS. I guess I got some updates, but I wanted to do a little bit of this debate recap. The debate we just saw on CNN with Bernie and Biden. Um, we are going to have a regularly timed show this Tuesday. Uh, it is going to be, normal time, normal show, except we're going to be doing it virtually. I think we're going to be doing it, welcome everybody, over Zoom because we're going to be staying out of the studio certainly at least a week. Um, uh, so as to not, so as to be safe, obviously, probably even 2 weeks to be honest. But we're going to keep the show going. There's going to be patron episodes for patrons. We'll probably actually do some additional stuff on Sunday. Um, Next week, we're going to do a deep dive on Joe Biden for the patrons. And we're going to stream a think tank on our YouTube channel for everybody. So just keeping everybody up to date. I think we'll do it over Zoom. And we will have a normally timed show and post game, but it's obviously going to be a little different because we won't be in studio. We'll do it over Zoom, and that's probably going to be the week after as well. Jokerification complete. Yes. And as always, I just want to say, guys, if you haven't yet and you're able to, if you go to patreon.com/TMBS, there are hundreds and hundreds of episodes that you can go through the full catalog and listen to illicit histories, idea primers, and the post games. I actually really think the last couple of years we've been really putting together as the show has evolved and we've evolved. And we will obviously continue to evolve like a real basis for building a better left and maybe hopefully getting us to some point we're actually equipped to really seriously compete. Um, and that's obviously a project I'm really serious about. I hope everybody's feeling okay. I hope that they're taking precautions. I'll do, is your Austin show in April still on? Oh, no. I've tweeted and a message went out to patrons. Obviously, the Austin show is rescheduled. We have a rescheduled date, I believe, in July. And so if you go to the venue, you can either get a full refund or you can just kick it to the next date because we're still definitely planning on going to Austin. But obviously, of course, we were not going to travel and put anybody at risk now. So definitely that's rescheduled. The June show in Boston, you can still get your tickets as of now. So let's see what happens. And hopefully by then things maybe will have at least leveled off, as they say. But we'll see. I've been seeing a lot of Trump supporters in Missouri saying that they went and voted for Biden to stop Bernie. That's interesting. I'll just do the top line of this debate, guys. There were moments where Bernie was, he took the gloves off. He scored some great hits on Biden on Social Security and Medicare. He scored some hits on Biden about the bankruptcy bill. Inbuilt into this whole process is that Joe Biden is lying his ass off, and we all know that the media is never going to help hold him accountable. If Bernie Sanders told one lie equivalent of the multiple lies that Joe Biden told tonight, it would be a major scandal. Joe Biden's lying about his position on the Hyde Amendment. Joe Biden is lying about his position with regards to the bankruptcy bill. Joe Biden was lying about multiple votes and stances. And I think the Cuba debate, the question of the debate was disgusting and a waste of time. Yeah, I want to talk about that. Obscene. It is so fucking outrageous and disgusting that these idiots are still asking the Cuba question. It is outrageous that they would have the gall to ask a question about Cuba in this debate. A nuclear bomb could be set off, and Bernie Sanders could be the only one with the exact answer and strategy for how to defuse the second one that's about to go off. And they'll be like, well, before we do that, you praised Castro's literacy program. Can we talk about that a 10th time? It was embarrassing. And in that exchange, let's be really clear. Joe Biden went into his mush brain red baiting, which was incredible. It was absolutely disgusting to watch. And I would love to see somebody say, if you're going to constantly demonize and lie about the Sandinistas, does that mean that you supported the nun murdering Contras that the Reagan administration was illegally funneling weapons to? That's the question I'd like to see asked. But beyond that, politically, it might have been smart, depending on who's watching the audience. I think, for the people who are actually showing up and voting, this kind of red baiting stuff is working. And I think that, there's no doubt that that might have scored some hits. Now, on the other hand, the Biden campaign and people around Biden are terrified that he won't mobilize a youth turnout, and rightfully so, because he's an awful candidate with a horrific record and no answers to any modern challenges, right? So the dynamic, is such that I was kind of shocked, and even David Axelrod of all people pointed out, he was like, in the second half of the debate, Biden wasn't trying to soothe anything or build any bridges to Bernie, and that was kind of weird. Now, and I'll get to these questions in a minute, and a Chris Matthews. Did Bernie do enough to move the needle? No, he didn't. That's really the bottom line. I think the combination of that, the first half of this debate was actually the most cogent we've ever seen Joe Biden. Now, again, stipulate, he's lying all over the place. He barely makes sense in the best of times. His record is awful. But if we keep going back to the fact that the Democratic establishment, the corporate media, those people they are super PACs for Joe Biden. Their whole mission, this whole race, has been to destroy Bernie Sanders because of what he represents for the good of society. And even in this time of crisis, we have Barack Obama out tweeting about Corona. Please, give me a fucking break. You did everything that you had in your power to stop the one person with anything like a plan to deal with this. So it's all disgusting, and it's all stacked against Bernie, and by extension, all working people. However, I want to say, look, Biden did a lot of what he needed to do if we're looking at it clinically. And I think the other really big problem here is that Bernie, whose decency and goodness is just, it's so apparent. It's so apparent. But, America, look, America is the land of the con artist. It's the land of the bullshit artist, right? It's the land of that. And it's also a land, and this is a human, limbic system response of panic and anxiety. And people are hungering for something to deal with a crisis right now. And the fact that you had so many exchanges, particularly when you think about the voters that are showing up, older voters, suburban voters, and Bernie is talking about all of the big picture things, and he's correct politically, he's correct morally, he's correct in terms of actually dealing with crises, whether or not they be corona or climate. But as a political communication, Joe Biden saying, hey, that's fine, but this is an emergency and we got to get in control of it now. That is a politically winning message. That is absolutely necessary to convey. And they needed to figure out a way to fuse those things. Just as, frankly, they could have gone a lot less on the sort of revolution discourse and things like that. We'll have a lot of things to kind of unpack as we think through this, and we really try to kind of strategize what we can do. Yeah, I still don't understand why look, if you go back and you look at the crime bill was supported by many African Americans in Congress. And again, guys, there is no singular black electorate. There's no singular any electorate. And there's plenty of people who, first of all, are not shocked by any white politicians' racism. And they also might have much more conservative views. Stop and frisk was supported at certain times under Bloomberg. That is literally apartheid adjacent policy targeting people of color. And oh, thank you so much, Shani. I appreciate that. I'm honored. And yes, that's something. I have people in my life that I have to certainly support. that are very on edge, and we all should kind of be looking at various ways that we can at least come together in some acts of solidarity to make up for the absolute grotesque moral obscenity of people who work and working people in this country being put on the front lines. But I'm going to say, just back in terms of Bloomberg, plenty of people of color supported that policy at certain times. So it's a really good anecdote to both dumb reductionist and racist talking points across the board, but also ones where we say, oh, I can't believe they would vote this way. That's essentializing too. We really need to stop essentializing. All electorates, including very much the African American electorate, is extremely diverse. It has competing demands. It has very different class interests inside it. And you gotta watch the Adolph Reed conversation from last Tuesday, because this is real. This is an actual thing that we've got to tease apart here, because the left needs to get so much more strategic, so much more nuanced, so much more pinpointed, and people need to be able to make these kinds of distinctions. I hated Biden going after Italy. Well, it was stupid. Again, though, Bernie should have had an answer on that. You could have seen that coming a mile away. And of course, the problem with Italy is that they didn't immediately take proactive measures to shut down the pandemic and shut down movement. Not that they have a form of national health care, which of course will only help. Um, and let me just say, in addition to that, let me see. Okay, I can't come out in good conscience as never Biden, right? To the earlier question. I'm going to have to be honest, and I'm going to have to be really clear about how I see this all playing out. I think in a time of extraordinary change, transition, and crisis, where we have a left that is building, we have an exceptional leader in Bernie Sanders, and some real promising movements, but a huge amount of work to do and some serious weaknesses. I cannot be flippant about empowering a Trump second term and a Stephen Miller agenda. And that's something people are going to need to be real about. And I'm not going to advocate that people vote in such a way that would give Trump a second term in a swing state. Now, that being said, I'm not going to spend the next several months having this conversation. I'm sorry if that triggers people. People are going to get triggered on the other side because they're going to want me to campaign and try to herd you into voting for Biden. I don't think that's the fundamental conversation right now. I don't. If you ask me clearly, I'm not going to bullshit you. I think if you live in a state that's comfortably one way or another, I live in New York, I absolutely will not be voting for Joe Biden. But I think, again, this is the other problem strategically. If Bernie Sanders is in a position, and if there was a critical mass of people that said, we have 6 million votes that ain't going anywhere without a vice presidential pick, a commitment to Medicare for all, and a Green New Deal, I would 100% support that. But vague, kind of contextless protest voting doesn't achieve anything. So, and that's really all I have to say about it, though. I'm not going to kind of go through the motions of this conversation a million times one way or another. As I say, there's plenty of people that are going to want me to do that. They're going to want me to police people's votes. And there's plenty of folks that are going to want me to spend several months ranting about never Biden and all this shit. This is what I think. That's how I see the vote taking place. And now I think we need to ask much more serious questions and really reflect on developing much more serious tactics and strategies for enlarging our politics, building off the incredible momentum that was created with Sanders, and thinking about what we actually need to do. What do we need to do in terms of getting rid of bad ideas, getting rid of bad tactics, getting rid of bad strategies, and coming together in ways that are actually effective and transformative and possible. And I got to tell you, from a big picture perspective of dealing with the fact that this system is giving out, that we are on the last legs of a certain mode of production, and that things are really hitting, to the extent there is a they want you to have these endless masturbatory conversations about who to vote for. And I want to have much more interesting, much more serious conversations than that. Because by the same token, as I think it's absolutely essential that Trump be voted out of office, I know that same old mindset of like, oh, oh well, Joe Biden, I mean, we'll get some picks for some departments and so on and so forth, and he'll slowly go along with it. No, that's not good enough at all. We're already out. We're graduated from that phase. Go back and read Achille Bimbe, the Age of Humanism is Coming to an End. That piece came out in 2016 before the election of Trump. We were already in global desecration politics in the neoliberal era. Exploitation rates getting faster and faster and faster. Inequality getting more and more and more extreme. The murder of populations on the periphery, whether they be in Gaza or in the inner cities of America, was getting more and more extreme and accelerated. So right now, what I want to do is sit back. I think this is actually a time where we need to think, we need to read, we need to get to know our neighbors, we need to connect with a broader context, and we also need to ruthlessly interrogate, thank you so much, what we have done and are doing inside our own, left, um, that has been counterproductive, stupid, or ineffective. We need to be much more strategic. And as I say, we need to get rid of stan culture. We need to get rid of cancel culture. We need to think effectively. And we also need to think about how we can develop the capacities inside ourselves, with regards to to building community with each other and thinking inventively about serious transformative politics, and also dealing with a dialectic right now. We have a situation. What do you mean, have I already given up? No, of course not. You never give up. How could you possibly give up? I mean, you can't give up until you stop drawing breath, right? So, no, this is a forgiveness and understanding culture is absolutely part of what we have to do. We need a forgiveness and understanding culture, and we also need a discernment, wisdom, and dynamism culture. We need both of those dialectics. There's a really interesting Tibetan teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who talked about something called idiot compassion, which was a compassion without wisdom. But wisdom without compassion doesn't have any heart. It doesn't have any ground. So anyways, look, I feel like I'm going all over the place here, but these are a lot of things that we need to look at. More simply, we actually do need to go back to Lula as an example. We really need to think about how to properly communicate in a broad, mass-based, appealing way. Good take on voting Trump must go. At the same time, build the momentum we have. Keep talking. Thank you. And again, I think in some ways there is momentum, in other ways there isn't. And again, don't. I don't know how to convey this, because don't be complacent about a Biden, term. A Biden term, the whole Biden project is completely done. What that mode of politics can do is totally exhausted and will produce horrifying outcomes. I'm talking about a bare minimum minimization, but big picture, these things that we have to deal with are much bigger. Embarrassing militaristic framing from CNN on COVID-19 as the paternalistic focus on Cuba. Bless you, Michael. Support alt media institutions like TMBS, Lula Libre. Thank you so much. China is the most people covering from COVID-19. Why didn't Bernie bring that up? Because there's no use. Like, how would that be politically effective for Bernie to do that? That wouldn't be politically effective for him to do that at all. In fact, he should have pivoted to South Korea, which is more analogous, and is, an ally, and something that you would want to, and is an ally. I shouldn't put that in quotation marks. It is an ally, and they've had an extraordinary performance, and it's because they have an incredible public health infrastructure and healthcare. I'm 22. The virus is concerning. Bernie needs a miracle to win this primary. Climate change threatens humanity. I'm not suicidal. What should I do with my life? Law school, run for Congress at 25. Love you. Well, okay. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Make calls to people close to you in your life. Slow down. Shout out to the Bronx. And all of those things are incredible, viable options, all of which would be awesome and helpful. And I'm glad you're thinking that way. There's a community out here for you. There's options, there's opportunity, and we're all going to keep going. At some point, we will win, or this whole broader experiment of being human will stop. And I think we're going to win. Biden's going to win the delegate count. He's going to cover the remaining South. Furthermore, New England. We Bernie supporters do? Well, I've just been kind of outlining it the whole talk. I think it's really a time to ask much bigger and more fundamental questions. Um, I'll look into the discrepancies between exits and poll performances. I'll look into that. I don't have anything off. I don't. I'll look into that. That's the type of thing, honestly, that I will look into. I'm wary of, but I also think, other people with more expertise and closeness to the campaign, as an example, would need to go on that angle for me to go, have a context for making a big argument about it. But I will look into it. Why are people enticed by the electability argument? It's nonsense. Do you hope about the truth getting through? Thank you for being here. It's my pleasure. Well, electability is people's processing of what they think is normal and what they think is safe. And again, Biden is as normie as it gets. Bernie has normie potential, but it needed to go much further. The only way a moderate corporate Dem wins in 28 is if D's obstruct President Sanders harder than R's obstructed Obama. How do we win the battle? Again, we got to start again. But even like the frame of that question, we got to start asking questions about what we do in communities, in local politics, with each other. These very highly speculative scenarios sometimes are really interesting and relevant, but it's not what's happening right now. It's like I remember one time, somebody complained to me I didn't do enough policy on my show. It's like, dude, policy is great, but policy, what are you talking about? Like, there's no power for policy right now. There isn't a context. We are planning on getting married in mid-July. Do you think we should get married now so that my fiance can have my insurance? I'm concerned that we won't be able to make it till later on. Yeah, I would consider doing that. I think that would, I'm not one to be giving advice, but that seems to me a very practical decision. And then, of course, wait a couple of months and have a great ceremony and a party and so on. Obviously, don't do that right now. But I think the practical steps should be good. So, look, the debate is not great. It's not going to change the dynamics of this race. I think that's extremely unlikely. But I also know that there are millions of people, again, having that dual experience that I've talked about before. I think there is a chunk of people whose empathy is expanding. I think they're getting much more concerned about their fellow human beings, their fellow citizens, and so on. I think they're much more concerned about the obscene rates of poverty, exploitation, and just general grotesqueness that is American society right now. And that is a global crisis in terms of inequality, in terms of ecology, and in terms of just the absolute obscene wealth concentration of the 1%. Thank you. Shouts back to Portugal. Do you think the Biden nomination will split the Democratic Party between progressives and centrists? And if so, do you think it means that Republicans' dominance for the next election cycles? No, I don't think so. I think that, again, progressives and the left are in a really tough conundrum because this is the only constituency of people that actually cares about human beings, particularly the poor and working people, right? Bernie's the only one up there who cares, okay? So when we have all these conversations, Bernie's harassed constantly. Will you support the nominee? Will you support the nominee? Will you support the nominee? No one else was harassed about that equivalently as Sanders. And of course, we've seen the whole, horrific, despicable Warren narcissism temper tantrum of the last couple of months. And that, has not made her a pariah. Believe me, if Bernie Sanders finished 5th place, spent weeks bad-mouthing Warren, he would not get like a nice swan song, interview with Rachel Maddow to complain and self-victimize more, right? So the reason I say that is because other folks in politics, the reason that they actually can extract a threat is because they're willing to press the ejection, they're willing to follow through on it. There's plenty of people, and now we're looking at the way way voters are showing up. Unfortunately, it might have actually gotten really scary. there's plenty of like never Trump types who are happy to say that they would never vote for Bernie Sanders and have a temper tantrum and do their thing. And, they don't like Trump, but they don't care. They don't care if food stamps are cut. They don't care if there's war on Iran. They don't care about any of these things. They just care about manners. They don't care about human life. Bernie Sanders cares about human life. Bernie Sanders cares about the human consequences of what happens. The example I used the other day on the Majority Report. Uh, you know, the I'm sorry guys, I'm getting these ones impressionistically, and I will do the next stream I do will be filled with impressions. But this one I'll just yes, support Isaiah James. But I just want to say that going back to 2009, look at how healthcare happened in the Congress. The Congressional Progressive Caucus, the old lame Congressional Progressive Caucus, okay? Not filled, decent liberal types, not radicals, not amazing. Co-founded by Bernie in the 90s, but filled with people like Barney Frank who, they aren't worth kissing Bernie's shoe, okay? They spent a period of time saying to Obama, we will not pass healthcare without a public option. We need a public option in healthcare. Okay? Obama didn't give it to them and they folded. And the reason they folded is because they cared. They cared about people getting healthcare and people not dying prematurely. Joe Lieberman threatened to kill healthcare in the Senate when it came to, I believe it wasn't the public option, it was the idea of lowering the Medicare eligibility age, a policy he had previously supported when he thought it might help the insurance companies. He said, basically, if you put that in, I will kill this whole bill. And you know what? It's an easy threat to make because Joe Lieberman doesn't give a fuck if anybody dies. He doesn't care about poor people having health insurance. He doesn't care about somebody not being able to see a doctor. He doesn't care about a kid not having an inhaler. He's a bad person. He is a really, really bad person. So, you see that in this campaign. And I think, Machiavellian wise, I really wonder if starting out of the gate, if I was running the Sanders campaign, let me just do a complete hypothetical. I might have said, okay, on one hand, the left needs to just get on board. If Warren tries to run, we're going to kneecap her out of the gate. We're going to talk about her corporate law stuff. We're not going to say like, oh, but actually it was okay because it was, no. We're going to run ads. We're going to be really clear. We're going to make any self-professed thought experiment, any self-professed progressive organization that doesn't get on board is going to feel serious heat. We're not playing any games. This is serious. We're here to win. Lives are at stake. And on the other hand, we're not going to do a kind of bunch of, we're not going to get into some silly woke arms race on Twitter. And we're also, frankly, we're not going to use the word socialism as much. We're not going to talk about a revolution. We're going to talk about FDR. We're going to talk about American history. Harvey K has definitely convinced me of that, at least as an electoral matter. And that's the way in which this campaign will get super normified. And then on the other hand, and again, for everybody, I know some folks will, freak out or whatever, but the reality is that none of this is policy questions, right? Like this would all be on messaging and on appeal. The same policy set is there, including on very, very clear stances on the rights and dignity of immigrants and refugees. As I've said before, the Austin show is going to be rescheduled. So you can go to the North Door if you have a ticket, and you can either get a full refund or rebook it for when we change the date to July. So you say you still you're going to use the word democratic socialism, but you drape it much more aggressively in reference points people feel comfortable with, particularly older voters. You say even things like, instead of a revolution, this is how we're going to restore America or whatever. I mean, stuff that people would not get super excited about in our circles, but would message well to a lot of people that actually vote. So you normie it up in that way, in that messaging way. And then on the flip side, you actually start saying from the beginning, and you just say, look, I know it doesn't matter what we do. MSNBC is going to try to destroy me. I know it doesn't matter what we do. Uh, these other candidates are fundamentally against what we are producing because we are the only campaign that actually has a worker agenda, right? And so, therefore, maybe I let folks know on the back channel that we're not committed to voting for the nominee. Maybe I'm not available to campaign. From a public relations perspective, he could not be running in the Democratic primary and say that he wouldn't support the nominee. But there's ways of really signaling, all the stuff that Hillary lied about. What if that actually happened? What if I actually didn't do any campaign events? What if I didn't really mobilize everybody, right? And you really start to show from day one that you have a block of people, millions of people, the most energized people in American politics. And if a real actual commitment, not a platform or some bullshit like that, but a vice presidential pick, core policy, like single payer is committed to, then we will not come through. That would be a play I would want to run. But this is hopefully by the time I'm in a position to maybe make a play like that, we have a lot more power. So I think that's kind of what I'm thinking. But anyways, guys, I might try to do one of these tomorrow. Gonna try to keep the content going for everybody, as we're all stuck in our apartments. And Tuesday we're doing TMBS. It's going to be over Zoom. We won't be in studio. You'll learn more about that soon. There's an amazing, thank you. There's an amazing, amazing Patreon episode today with Joanne Wiest. We need to absolutely uproot essentialism in every way, shape, and form. It's going to require a lot of rethinking. A lot of kind of comfortable patterns people have gotten with in the left are not serving us. They're undermining a project. They're not in service of big human liberation for all. They're much more in the service of animizing us and supporting a self-isolating, tech-driven, and endlessly divisive and hierarchy-generating economy. And we need to do completely different. My book is available for pre-order. There's a hilarious author page on Amazon. Hopefully they will fix that on Monday. But if you go to Amazon now and buy Against the Web, the cosmopolitan answer to the new right, you will see the hilarious mistake. But just go get your pre-order. Guy, and you can also go to John Hunt Publishing. Go to patreon.com/TMBS. Stay safe. Treat each other well. Treat yourself well. We're going to be thinking through this. We're going to be strategizing. We're going to make this happen. This is really, I feel like, as a show and as a more kind of broader movement, this is actually just the beginning. This is the baptism of fire, kind of, and we have to sort of eat the poison to come out of the other side, if I can keep throwing intense New Agey metaphors at all of you. But I mean everything I say. I appreciate each and every one of you. Peace and love. Thank you so much for the super chats. Do become a patron, and let's keep rolling. The name is Against the Web, a cosmopolitan answer to the new right. Peace and love, guys.